All right, we are live, and I am going to wait a few seconds, hopefully not too many, to see if there we go. YouTube and StreamYard are talking to each other, and we are live. All right, welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the Deconversion Hangout. A few rules about the Deconversion Hangout. This is primarily designed for people who are deconverting, who are interested in what deconversion is all about and all that jazz. I'm very committed on this particular stream to helping people who are struggling with their deconversion, different aspects of it, emotional things, and being a support. Hopefully we are a support group for everybody who has deconverted and is looking for people to back them up. But before I get into too much of that, I do want to get a few announcements on the way. I think Saturday's stream, I'm kind of toying with the idea of taking everything that we now know about fangs and fangsology, and we're going to have a fangsology night where I'm going to talk about fangs and everything that we know so far about our deity. So that might be a lot of fun, and anybody can interject and things like that. So we're definitely going to have some fun with that. Mostly, I do that to kind of illustrate the absurdity of religion, that anybody can create a religion out of anything, and people will believe it. So that's what we're going to do. I wanted to also pull up. This is now the Catholic Pope tomato, the tomato Pope emoji. I think I may put the other one back in, so there's a dark version and a light version, so that you can have that. But in honor of our new Pope, in real life, the tomato Pope has been born, and it is. You might be right. Yeah, I've got enough artwork and stuff that I'm actually thinking about Merc more seriously, because there's a lot of fun I could have with that. Plus, make a little money on the side while I'm doing it, and just getting the message out of fangs. It's an infant religion. So, but yes, I think that's something that I'll definitely pursue, because I think this has been one of the funnest times I've had on this channel, is going through all the mythology of fangs. So, but let's see who's here. Katie's here. Um, let's see, and then Rimmer came by, and somewhere in here is the cranky elder god. That's good. I always like having the cranky elder god in the corner. Keeps the riffraff away. So there's several others here, according to my counter. So, but thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate all of you. Deconversion. I last week I met with my therapist, and I've been thinking about something that we talked about a long time ago, like dealing with the emotions of deconversion is still something that I struggle with mightily, because I have been trained by my religion, for instance, to not think of myself very highly. There's also the issue of self-esteem issues that always crop up with me, like my procrastination is symptomatic of my not being very confident internally with myself. I can be very confident outwardly. The autistic masking is really good at that. But you end up with a lot of emotions that you have to deal with. Like, I've also, like, in the chat, there's a good one, a deconversion that was there, because there was a little bit of talk about rescue dogs and general. And I still think about my dog that I used to have with a great deal of fondness. And I think the reason I haven't gone to a new one is I'm just not over the grief of the old one. And one of the deconversion issues that I still get when people come here is they will say, I don't want to conceive of myself as an animal. Okay. They don't want to admit that they're just an ape. Okay. Uh, Rabbit-safarian? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Rabbit-safarianism. Rabbit-safarianism would be okay, ribbit. Okay, I get it. I get it. All right, there we go. Got to get it straight. But yeah, one of the big ones that I had, human ego doesn't allow you to think of yourself as lesser than a lot. Like it's one of the things you cling to. So it's one of the things you cling to when you're a believer, that somehow this makes you more special than everybody else. And I've had that argument with theists many, many times on this channel, that really a lot of why they believe is that they're hubris about who they are as a member of the human race. And I think we've created religions to make ourselves feel special, like we're better than everybody else. And when I hear like Katie in the chat talk about her rescue work with dogs, and you know the symbiotic relationship like that exists between the human and dogs, is because we recognize something of empathy between each other. And I don't know, from my own standpoint, when I deconverted, one of the things that really hit me hard was I was just a human being among many other human beings on a planet populated by animals that's insignificant. you know, um, that's always there. It's always there. So, but yeah, that struggle is a lot of people that deconvert have that struggle, is they're no longer special. Okay, they're just not special anymore. And religion makes you feel special. If it does anything else, it does. That's one of the big emotional hooks, is it makes you feel like, oh, you've got the truth, or you've got this, or you've got that, and other people don't. And I think that's one of the funny parts about it. But at the same time, like with Christianity and Islam, you're a sinner and you're useless, okay, to God, unless God helps you be useful to him. And that hits you too. So you end up alternating between two states all the time. And I don't know, I've had this I don't know if I've had this discussion here on the channel, but I think I had it with my therapist. Is that like some of these religious doctrines, could they very much lead you to being, reinforcing like bipolar behavior? She didn't have a real definitive answer to me, but she said she could see where it would be the case. But it's like, on the one hand, your religion will tell you you're this awesome creation of God. And then your religion will tell you, but you're a piece of crap because you sinned and you turned away from your God. It's just like, it's like, does that lead to kind of some very interesting thinking about yourself? If somebody's already like naturally bipolar, wouldn't that feed into that and make it worse? And yes, so there's that. Everybody's heard about the bird, yes. Rumors of false typists. Yeah, there's a lot of false typists, as Katie points out. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think I'm getting to this, Katie. It's like I now find my specialness in some of the relationships that I have with people, like my grandkids. You know, you had a thought about it? Okay. Well, give me your thought. Came to nibble. Okay. Came to nibble on the bill. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for me, the reinforcement of not being worth anything feeds into a lot of stuff still. So it's taken me years to get to this point. That's why I tell people to be very patient with yourself when you're deconverting, because it's like not going to happen instantly. Like the attitudes, the feelings and effects, you have to detangle yourself from this for quite some time, depending on how long I mean, if you got involved in a cult for 6 months, it can be a traumatic experience, but you can kind of put it behind you. But if you've been part of something for decades and then you leave it, yeah, it's not going to just disappear. So a multi-post. Start with the basics and move on. I'm here to answer questions about deconversion as much as anything else. This is still one of my favorite things to talk about because I was listening to Mr. Deity today, and he's like going through the stats that were released from a worldwide um, study about religion that the Pew Research did, and it's still showing, like there's a downward trend in religiosity despite all the apologists and despite religions making extra efforts. It's still going down. And now it's going down worldwide. It's almost like if you keep trying to justify slavery as apologist, if you keep trying to do all this nasty stuff, human beings are going to kind of react to it. Okay, it's like they're done with it. Like the one study said that for every person joining a religion, about 6 people are leaving, and that's not just in the United States or Europe. Now it's worldwide. Like it's becoming a worldwide trend, and so it's interesting to me. But yeah, go ahead. Anxiology, that's a chance. And we're off. Yes, I don't know. Because I think that there's many of Earl's artwork that could become T-shirts now. Like this is the one that was released with her full. This is the full artwork of Fangs, and there's so much illustrated here. But I think the fact that I can lampoon Catholicism and not face ire for it is kind of interesting. I think that's a big change in the Western world, including the United States. But yeah. Me too. The problem I think we have in the United States that's unique is the Bible Belt. It's not just a part of the religiosity in the Bible Belt. When I was in Texas, I realized so much of the culture of the South is built around Christianity, and so it's like it's definitely there. So so there's that. Talking about this Aramaic Gospel of John, I thought maybe the earliest Gospel were just such sayings of Gospels and the wisdom that came from the Lord. Yes, this is how we know it's a growing legend, Rimmer, because the very earliest Gospels are like just the teachings of Jesus. Like there's no narrative story. Okay, there's just this idea. There's just this teacher who has his teachings, and I think what happened and why it's a growing legend, and it happened very quickly, is somebody took those teachings and, well, who was this person? And not having any real information, they just started making shit up. Okay, it's one of the things I'm going to talk about when I do my video on questionable witnesses about the Gospel of Mark, because I realize that I have to hit the Gospel of Mark probably separately, because the Gospel of Mark doesn't copy from the other Gospels. And so it's the original like gospel with the original information of the 4. But I don't think he's not copying from somebody else too, because there's other gospels that just keep going back and back and back. And there's so many of them that are just really small and short, and they're just teachings of Jesus or 1 or 2 events of Jesus's life. And it's like, this is the biggest proof of the growing legend theory, is if you put these gospels in chronological order, the story just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you get to like the Gospel of Peter with talking crosses and everything else. So, yes, first century Jews did eventually leave Christianity. It's one of the most interesting exoduses. Like to them, I think to the first century Jewish Christian, Jesus was like this apocalyptic, Christianity was this apocalyptic movement. And when then it didn't came to pass, they just labeled it as another false movement, like they had many others, and moved on. Whereas Gentiles, this was their first introduction to like a monotheistic religion. and they wanted to hang on to it, so they altered the message. So it might be overestimated. I think that's. I don't know if it's so much atheism, but lack of religiosity. Um, well, Jesus made it into New Judaism only after the temple was destroyed. Yes, there's a lot of. Yeah, they deconstructed from Judaism and into Christianity, but then there's an exodus afterwards where Jews went back into Judaism. That's what the writer of Hebrews is reacting to so strongly. He's like, why are you going back there? And the reason was, to a lot of the Jews, this messianic, prophetic, apocalyptic movement failed, and they're like, well, that's just, there goes another one. And they went back. So um, so yeah, but they eventually went back. Remember, they decided. That's an interesting deconstruction point, because you had somebody leaving Judaism to go become a Christian, and then they leave Christianity and go back to Judaism. And I find that a fascinating movement as well. I agree with you there. Oh, I was grossed in a 1969 horror film, The Doll of Satan. A huge benefit is you can actually enjoy a good devil flick without taking it literally. Yeah, I agree with you, Ron. The real thing about deconstruction and like art forms, like I can absolutely appreciate Earl's irreverent, um, sacrilegious art. Okay, I remember when I was hanging out with the Atheist Republic for a bit, they had their like infidel art or whatever it was. It was just like they would create art on purpose that was sacrilegious, and it was done to make a point. And I think they got some threats for doing that. It's funny how artwork can bring out the worst in people, but yeah, like watching films and viewing different art forms and listening to certain music. I mean, I agree with Aaron Ra. The problem with some of my favorite bands is they talk about the devil so much, and it was because back then you could really promote yourself if people thought you were a devil worshiper. I don't think the evangelical Christians realized how much they helped many of those bands become successful and famous. So Bob recently interviewed Mark Smith, author of Broken Promises, Why Jesus Isn't Coming Back. Looks like a good way to explain why Jesus is a false. Yes, and I think that was the one of the biggest things in my deconversion was trying to reconcile that problem, that prophecy that Jesus makes about there will some here will not taste of death until they see me returning. Now, a lot of people try to get that, oh, the transfiguration happened immediately. It's like, no, he's not talking about him personally being transfigured. He's talking about the full blown, honest to goodness, um, you know, coming of God's kingdom. He's talking about the resurrection. It doesn't make any sense for that prophecy to mean that. And then, yeah, you end up with, I don't know, it might be a good book to read for some people, but, but it's like, that idea there was so many things when I was studying the Bible that were problematic that but that was one of the big ones is like Jesus is essentially a false prophet at that point. And according to the Old Testament, false prophets were prophet if they told you not to obey the commands of God. They were still a false prophet, even if their predictions came true. And if their predictions weren't 100%, they were a false prophet. And the penalty for being a false prophet, according to the Old Testament, is to be stoned to death. And Jesus then should have not only been crucified, he should have been stoned to death based on his track record. So just tell us boring. Yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the Eagles. There's a few really good songs that they have, but so, but yeah, a lot of their stuff is like sounds the same as something else you did. A lot of bands are like that. Like they have like 2 or 3 brilliant songs on every album, and the rest are just filler. So, so stoned to death, that's a thing. Explains a lot. Okay. Hey, Earl, you need to deconstruct from dentistry. Is dentistry become a religion? Stop encountering death on my way to work. Okay. I don't know, Earl. It may be your environment. Okay, maybe it's not dentistry. It may just be your environment. I don't know. Lucifer. I've heard of it. I've heard of Lucifer, and I see. This is one of those deconstruction issues of like looking at listening to forbidden music, looking at forbidden art, looking at forbidden movies, watching forbidden television shows. Like, don't do that. That'll wreck your faith. And now you just like do it with impunity to find out what the fuss was all about. Like, how did they know that unless they watched it themselves? You know, I remember back in the day, oh my gosh, in the 80s, there was these guys that went around called the Peters Brothers that were always talking shit about all the rock and roll at the time and how it was devil this and devil that. And I think they made the national news. So there's that. Commanders fan, so you can say, well, I guess I would understand that. My guess is you don't have a lot of good feelings about the Cowboys either. Me either. After Hannibal brought most of the Romans to their knees, other Canaanites so hoped to foster some more character, probably. Everybody wants their victorious commander over the Roman Empire. From extreme fundamentalist to preterist, all in between before losing faith altogether. Oh, yeah, I can relate. I think I examined every form of religion and every form of Christianity in particular when I was deconverting. And my conclusion, this is why when theists come here and they want to say that their religion is the true one, their Christianity version is the true one, I'm like, well, that's not what this group says. They say that you ignore this verse of scripture, or the Protestants will talk about how the Catholics are wayward and vice versa. So it's like nobody can agree on the true form of Christianity. And so when you start deep diving that issue, Katie, yeah, it becomes problematic. You know, what is the true religion? Christians go, well, Christianity is X years old, 2,000 years old. Well, Hinduism is like 3 times that. Okay. So if we're going an age of religion, they win, so. Yeah. Lucifer series got too melodramatic. I can see that. Stuck in traffic because a dump truck fought with 2 sedans. Yeah, that's going to be bad for the sedans. The dump truck won. One of the sedans got ripped in half. Yeah, that's not a good thing. I've seen people survive it, but it's rare, very rare. Arrow and Flash. Yeah, there's a lot of good series that started out well and then end well. I just don't watch TV that much anymore. It's registered Starbucks mobile card taped to a dartboard. Okay, fair enough. One of my fellow teachers when I was in Texas was a Commanders fan too, and wow, the hatred she had for both the Eagles and the Cowboys. I just have a question. Do you guys like hate like the Giants, or is the Giants kind of your pity choice of your division? Or just feel sorry for them, except when they win the Super Bowl suddenly. Hey, Kevin, thank you. All right, hail fangs. Oh yeah, it's just thanks for the support. I appreciate it. Puts us a little bit closer to the hat reveal and me posting the link to StreamYard and letting people in against my autistic wishes. So yeah, so there's that. But thank you very much. Yes, I think Saturday we're going to do. Earl wasn't here when I announced this, but I think Saturday we're going to do all the fangsology that we know so far. I'm going to try to put together a PowerPoint and post, get it up and show everything that we know about fangs so far, and what's been declared to be true. So that's what we're going to do Saturday. We're just going to have a good time and have some fun with fangsology and hopefully illustrate some absurdity of religion by being absurd at the same time, using a lot of argument absurdum. So I don't know where Maverick is. Maverick didn't get very far with me. Okay. Because I flat out told him that his form of apologetics is dishonest. And I think that got him. I'm like, and I think the thing with pre-suppers that usually gets them and me and them butt heads, I like, dude, you can literally use pre-supper for any religion. Like I could come out here and say, Odinism is the true religion. The true God is Odin, the All-Father, and the pantheon of gods as well. And that the Havamal is the word of Odin because it says so. And you have to prove me wrong. That's how vacant presuppositional apologetics is like, I can literally presuppose any religion. And I think that's why they don't show up, because I simply do that, and that's the end of it. So there's that. Work on time. Sent pictures of the highway. So you encountered this in the morning, and the doc got mad because you were late because of traffic. Yeah, the doc needs to like chill. They would have a much easier time convincing me if there really was any convincing about. Yeah, there's no agreement, Cy, on any of that, and that's the real problem. If the Bible is objective truth, it would stand as so real there wouldn't be any disagreement about it. But there's too much interpretation allowed, which allows a religion to survive. But yeah. No, they don't. I think I was listening to somebody talk about this, or I can't remember if it was a conversation. Oh man, I wish I could remember the context, but somebody mentioned that like the book of Genesis is the biggest act of plagiarism, maybe the first act of religious plagiarism in history, because they basically rip off the Epic of Gilgamesh and several others. I saw somebody had a video about that today. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I can't remember who. But yeah, I've had enough Old Testament in seminary and Bible college to tell you, even back then in the 90s, they knew this. They knew that the Epic of Gilgamesh and all that stuff, you could literally see where people ripped off and created Genesis. Throw in a little Zoroastrianism, throw in this new mythology, and wham, bam, you got Judaism. So, okay. Well, Earl, we love you. You're awesome. You do awesome artwork. Fangs loves you. He nibbled for your sins. Yeah, I think Maverick got the band hammer too. Good point. But yes, we love you, and you're awesome, and you're a great person. And no matter what you go through, you can come to us. So I don't know. I can do presuppositional fangsology. Fangs exists. See, this is kind of my point of, and it's skeptics' point and a lot of other people's point when they create like fictional mythologies. I'm making the point about how easy it is to make a mythology, like the whole spaghetti monster thing. Okay. That's what that was for. It was a spoof, okay, of showing how easy it is to create a deity and a theology and a system around it that people believe in. Okay. And you can pre-sup them all. Prove a flying spaghetti monster doesn't exist. You got to prove that it doesn't exist. Okay. That's the weakness of presuppositional arguments, is by presupposing your religion is true and everybody has to prove it false. You put yourself on equal footing with every other religion in existence, because there's no way to adjudicate at that point between religions. You remove the ability to adjudicate your ability to criticize another religion, because they have just as much basis for believing in their religion as you do. Okay. And it's the biggest flaw. And when I read Planaga back in the day and when I was in seminary and we were talking about this, it's the point I brought up then, and it's the point I still bring up now. It's one of the most useless apologetic forms there is. And that's saying something. Okay. So there's that. Work with my 5 stages of acceptance. It's kind of a middle ground between anger and bargaining. I can see that. I really can. Yeah, Sharon Keith Richards will survive the apocalypse with the roaches. I'm fairly certain. I am certain that Keith Richards is a necromancer and that every time a famous musician dies, he absorbs their life force. So that's how he's staying going. I'm pretty sure Cher might be along the same veins. The flood before Noah. Finkel's a delight to this and that. Yeah, Eden is a Persian word. This is the reason, remember, why we know most of the Old Testament was written at that time frame. Okay, the Persian, Babylonian era of that part of the world. And that's how we know that the Old Testament, including all the Pentateuch and all that stuff, is written at that time, because you're right. Eden is a Persian word. Okay. There is no like Hebrew word for what Eden was to the Hebrews. That's kind of one of the problems. I have a former Mormon, now Norse pagan friend at work. We think if there is a God, it has to be good or evil at the same time. Then I told him about presuppositions, and we couldn't think of any. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Won't eat that ham. All right. Do you mind sharing what led you to start deconstructing your faith? Was it because of something negative you went through? No. Okay. One of the greatest myths that apologists like to tell everybody is that the reason people deconstruct is because of something personal I went through. I was a pastor for 20 years. I got backstabbed, beaten up, smashed around. My father died, and he was a devout believer. I mean, there was a whole bunch of emotional reasons to stay in the faith. But the more you study the Bible, the more you deep dive into it, the more you get into its origins, the more you realize, like every other religion out there, it's a concoction. It's made up. And so, no, I went through some negative things while I was in the faith, but none of them led to my deconversion. That's one of the biggest myths that apologists tell you. Now, if you go to your average atheist association that may have done a poll on this, what caused you to leave your faith, the number one reason was assessment of the Bible. Okay. And trying to prove the Bible to be true. Okay. So for me, the intellectual losing my faith probably happened in my 20s. Like I was clinging to something emotionally for a long time. And after a while, the emotional reasons to stay in the faith became more and more diminished. And the intellectual side, the rational side says, yeah, this is garbage. So no, it had nothing to do with that. That's probably the biggest thing apologists like to say, is that's why people are deconstructing. There are too many people deconstructing for this to be the only reason. Maybe some of them left because of something negative they went through, and then they reassess their faith. But some people that deconstruct, they go back into their faith. So, but no, I deconstructed my faith because I went to school. I went to Bible college. I went to seminary, and I studied these things and realized that things were not as ironclad as my fundamentalist church told me. And then the more I did it, the more I began to study it, and I spent a good lifetime studying it. My deconversion story is a playlist somewhere here. Just look at my playlist and you can find the whole thing if that's what you're interested in. But to answer your question, the start of my deconstruction of my faith was simply studying like the Gospels. The Gospels are kind of my wheelhouse, but I started studying the Gospels, realized there's 33 other Gospels out there. And the only reasons we believe the four are the four is because a group of men over decades decided that. Okay. And it had nothing to do with inspiration or anything. So no problem, Earl. You're always welcome to whine here. You do good artwork. We let you whine. You're an artist, so we expect oddities. So it's all good. I don't think we'll have. I'm not sure Fangs likes commandments himself, being a trickster god. I mean, if he made commandments, he would just break them. So I heard of spaghetti monster as a Christian, but now I get it now. No, there you go. Yep. Poor choice of incarnation at dinner time. Oh, you would know, Cranky Elder God. You would know. Yeah, he does. He doesn't look good. I'm not sure what we're going to actually do with Keith Richards when he actually does die. Um, it's going to happen, and it's going to be like, well, if I was Keith Richards, and I'm sure as a member of the Rolling Stones, he has like money. I would like get myself buried in some occultic tomb like thing and start fostering the rumor that I'm actually an undead now, because that's what I would do. But just as a joke, I would be giggling on it about it on my deathbed. So yeah, quote all the scholar, and no, it's not. No, it's not. Yeah, I get that a lot. We got that recently, like a couple live streams ago. Well, that's not true. That's not true. And it's like, yeah, it is. Okay. So yeah, that's the other problem. Paradise has got its own things. I mean, yeah, and the other thing about that, Tyler, is if it was personal, so what? It doesn't prove that the deconversion is illegitimate just because you had personal reasons to leave. I mean, I think the thing with deconverting people, yeah, sure, there's personal reasons why people leave. I left because I have too much intellectual integrity to stick with something I feel is false. And so I bailed on Christianity because it's false. In fact, on Tuesday, I'll be having a special live stream celebrating my 10th anniversary out of Christendom. So I was still preaching in a church for the next few years, but I'm going to talk about how I feel 10 years out of Christianity. And so we'll be doing that on Tuesday. So a couple of special ones coming up. Fangsolatry on Saturday, and Tuesday will be me. I think I may even take the night off work. I have some time saved up, so I may do that. So you have a list before. Yeah, we'll have a list before the streams end, probably. Hey, whatever, Earl. We love you. Hey, Penworm, good to see you. There's an emoji for everything. Yes. Yeah, we're working on it. I mean, I've got like Earl. This is the latest tomato pope emoji in honor of the new pope. I think I'm going to put this picture in as an emoji too of fangs with the marinara sauce. I think that'll be cool. I still like this one. I laugh every time I see it. So nibble through as you would have nibbled yourself. Nibbled. Okay. Oh. Yeah, those commandments about not coveting your neighbor's wife or ass or probably not going to sit well. Uh, People have asked me why he's a trickster god. Have you ever dealt with rabbits in your garden? Man, are they trickstery. They find ways to get in. They're not dumb. Okay. I don't think rabbits are as dumb as people think they are, but wild rabbits are smart. Okay. They get into stuff and they find a way. Most elder gods affectionately refer to Keith Richards as Grandpa. Okay, fair enough. Buried beside the blue nun as an experience to see who doesn't compose the fastest. Oh, I really honestly think, Rimmer, you hit it here. For me, there was just no good personal reasons to stay in my faith anymore. For me, it was all the emotional connection. I was also professionally connected to Christianity because I was a minister. So I had a lot of vocational / personal reasons to stay with Christianity. Intellectually and scholarly, no, gone long time ago. And it was just me trying to figure out ways to make it work. And eventually I ran out of ways to make it work. So yeah, he's not looking good. I agree. I think that's what draws a lot of people to this channel is my preacher history. There's a few of us that have that. Durante Lamar is another one. He's a former preacher, and he's doing very well. He's very charismatic, though, and he works very hard at this, and I need to work harder at it. But my autistic procrastination laziness hits me every once in a while. So, what was the Quakers deal? Quaking. The Quakers and the Shakers, and there's another group that hit Pennsylvania about the same time. They had some of their members had experiences with the Holy Spirit, God, whatever. They were kind of the precursors of the Pentecostals, if you really ask me. But they started quaking. They'd have these quaking fits under the power of God, kind of thing, and that's where they got their name. The Quakers, for them, they at least still believed in marriage and having kids, where the Shakers did not. The Shakers grew by adopting orphans. So my mom visited a Shaker village once. I think it still exists as a historical attraction somewhere, but they have a very unique culture where the men and women sat on opposite sides, and they never. I'm fairly certain several got kicked out because that didn't last. So you added some commentary. Yeah, I saw you had some more commentary. Okay, yeah, I gotta zip over. You can post your link in there for everybody else too, but you did some good work there with some Fangsology, so that I'm going to have to add in. I think it's very interesting what Fangs' relationship with the religious vegetables is. Like every one of them seems to be a little bit different. So yep, that's why he's a trickster god. He also gets past the gardener quite a bit. The all omnipotent supposed God Yahweh. Yeah, he gets around that guy all the time. So do not covet your neighbor's rabbit, nor your neighbor's garden, nor your neighbor. See, but that's just the thing, though, Katie. This is exactly the kind of commandment that Fangs would look at and say, "Oh yeah, I can get past that." So yeah, Shakers swore off sex completely and marriage for a while because they, like many apocalyptic groups, they felt Jesus was coming back soon. The Quakers, I don't think, did that, but they had very similar experiences. It was just a difference of opinion on certain issues. But the Quakers they were called the Quakers because they quaked. Okay, like they have these tremor experiences under the power of God. So there's that. So, but yes. All right. But yeah, there's where I read that one. That was outstanding, Earl. Yes, shaking or quaking before Yahweh. Yes, it lines up with a lot of Pentecostal experiences. Like you'll see Benny Hinn cause people to fall under the power, where he just waves his cloak and a whole bunch of people fall over. Same kind of thing. There's a belief among like ecstatic utterance people, ecstatic, all that kind of weirdness, that God kind of takes over your body at times and things like that. So yeah, I very much feel that they were like the first Pentecostals, like they were the first Protestants to really have these kind of experiences. And then the Shakers are kind of an offshoot, and several others. Then you get the holiness movement that gets added to that, where the whole idea of a second work of grace that came out of Wesleyan theology, where you have this second work of grace that purifies everybody. You know, you get your heart, you get rid of the corruptions. You have the sanctifying work of the Holy Spirit, and then the Pentecostals kind of changed that in some cases to like speaking in tongues, being baptized for service, and others just added a third work of grace of being baptized for service, and others just changed it from being holy and whatever. So yeah, there's that. Um, so it when you really look at the history of Pentecostalism, I think you do have to go all the way back to the Quakers and the Shakers and some of those. But there were also mystic groups in medieval times that did some of this stuff too. So there's always been an element. So there's that. Black rabbits, white rabbits. Thou shalt not recover black rabbits' carrots. Okay. All right. Quakers are like Shakers with a finish. Oh my gosh, Rimmer. Are you sure you're not a dad? Those are dad jokes. The Shakers and Quakers were onto something. They just missed the part about shaking with laughter. Okay. We're debating that. Is White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane a psalm? It might be. We have openly declared that all references to rabbits are like precursors, everything to fangs. Fangs is the ultimate combination of all things rabbit. So there's that. At least the present incarnation of all things rabbit. So, it may change. So in England and the freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. Yeah, I will give the Quakers one thing, because they were kind of a persecuted group. They were one of the groups of people leading the charge on freedom of religion, like in the United States later. Like they saw the value of the way the First Amendment was written. So there could be no state-run Christianity, while at the same time allowing them to freely exercise what they wanted to do. So kudos to them on that. Although Pennsylvania is, I think, still one of the states that says if you're not a believer, you can't run for office. So there's that. Yeah, they were also staunch abolitionists. They were very much against slavery right from the get-go. They had a lot of good traits to them, don't get me wrong. It's just some of the other stuff. Yeah. Yeah, my mom said that they had a wood shop on the Quaker Village. That's how they made their money, is they make wooden objects, wooden furniture. The wooden furniture is very simple and very durable, but yeah, I guess I could see what you're saying, Rimmer, that they like to polish wood, and yeah, it's a substitute for something else. You might be a dad, you just haven't been told. Okay, fair enough. Covered all the carrots you want to cover it, fine. See, we're going to have contradictory commandments, but then again, that kind of proves my point. Yes, that's part of it. Yes, Kyle, the gardener is God, and Fangs needs to purify the vegetables. In particular, it's Yahweh God, because he's not the only one. Okay, there's a lot of gardener gods. I'm sure Fangs is a trickster god too, like a lot of the fertility gods and goddesses out there too, that are about harvest and gardens and things like that. I'm fairly certain they consider him a trickster god and a nemesis. So whether or not Fangs is a good or a bad deity is very hotly debated. So I don't know. I consider Satan like a minor god. or maybe a God equal to Yahweh, and we just don't want to talk about that. When I read the Old Testament, I really feel like there's several references to the sons of gods, meeting in conclave, and Yahweh seems to be just one of them. Like he's the one that has the throne at the moment. So when you go back and read the Old Testament with that in mind, that this is a culture that believes in many deities, and just every tribe has their own. When you read it that way, it's so much so. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. There's so many gods out there. Mennonites were all part of the anti-Baptist movement. Yes, I do believe that's correct historically. Anabaptists were, the whole issue of baptism came up after the Protestants revelation. If we're not baptized, how are we going to heaven? And the other silly things that we're going to argue about. Communion became an arguing point. Baptism became, and the Anabaptists were more about, is it really about baptism, or is it about a life lived before God? Kudos to them, I guess. And getting away from the silly nonsense in a sense. But yeah, there was this whole movement of people that were just wanting to live differently. The United States opening up and allowing a lot of these different religions to come here was kind of a boon to them, because they could get away and live their life the way they wanted to, as Christians. And yeah, I don't know, they might have come here to push the Quakers. It's possible. I know that the Puritans and the Quakers didn't get along very well. Pennsylvania is, gosh, I do believe it is one of the 8 states that still has in it, you have to believe in a supreme power to hold office. Now, the 1960 ruling by the Supreme Court makes it kind of stupid. PolitiFact will point that out to you, that it's true that it exists, but there's no way for them to enforce it, thanks to a 1960 ruling by the Supreme Court at the time. But that said, given the current nature of the Supreme Court, could it come back with a vengeance? I don't know. But there's like 8 states of the Union that still have, you must believe in God in order to run for office. So they sit there and want to talk about how did the Biden administration persecute Christians. I'm like, you literally have 8 states of the Union that have in their constitution open discrimination against people that don't believe. Who really needs this committee? So probably falling, yeah, at least their gardens for sure. So yeah, Amish, Mennonites, continent, and Quakers and Shakers from the UK. Yeah, that's probably true. Then you throw in the Puritans, thanks to Oliver Cromwell and all the rest of it. And it's, the United States is really a mishmash of people that came here to simply practice their religion in the way that they wanted to. That's why the First Amendment was actually, some people railed against it because they wanted a state religion, but a lot of Christians, and Christian nationalists should take note, a lot of Christians back then absolutely agreed with the First Amendment because they didn't want one group of Christianity. They had seen how that worked. Like if you put the Catholics in charge of France, all the rest of the forms of Christianity get beat up. Okay. And if you put like the Puritans in charge of England, all the rest of the forms of Christianity get beat up. And so they didn't want one form of Christianity. So they figured the best way to do it was create a state that didn't have any religion to it at all. And the Christian nationalists seem to have forgotten that lesson. Like they've forgotten the lessons of history, that the best way to keep the state is to keep religion out of it. And they just don't seem to want to do that. So, I don't know. How did I view the Quakers? I found them interesting. As a Pentecostal believer, I kind of did view them as the precursors to my own faith. A lot of Pentecostals, for instance, look back at history through the Holiness movement and back through the Quakers and the Shakers. There's plenty of mystic movements in medieval times that are very Pentecostal-like. So Yeah, I mean there was a lot of that. So I probably viewed them as great grandfathers of my own faith. When I left Pentecostalism, I just kind of found them to be weird forms of Christianity. So, but yeah, I could resonate with them. Yeah, I think they're the only group of people. The Puritans were the only group that came to America trying to dominate everything, and they were the one. I think if you look at the preachers that railed against the First Amendment of the Constitution when it was formed, they were probably Puritans. Okay, okay, they were probably Puritan-based religions and groups. Okay, that had that viewpoint, like God should be dominant. So, but yeah, yeah, Amish and Mennonites for Switzerland. The Quakers originally England. Yeah, two different strands. Yeah, they were coming here for the religious war, refuge from the religious wars. The Puritans are probably the noted exception because they did take over England for 10 years and they became universally hated for it. So, um, and so when they came to the New World, there was still this attitude of dominance in them. And that's why them and the Quakers, I don't think got along very well. So, yeah, yeah, him and the writings of Voltaire. Just looking at European history at the time, even at the time that they were alive, it's like everywhere you see religious persecution, being people being persecuted for their Christian faith or otherwise, it's because some religion is control of the state. And what most of these Christian nationalists don't realize is that back in the day, it was Christians that were arguing for a religionless state. Like let's get rid of religion from the state so all of us can live and practice our religion freely and nobody will be in a position to dominate the other religions. They just began to realize that. Okay. And religious freedom was kind of born out of Christianity in a sense. But so. Oh, Oliver Cromwell. You want to talk about somebody you want to talk about somebody that's completely polarizing as a character of history. Calvinists love him. Everybody else hates him. So, oh, descendants of the Quakers, Friends Church. Yes, I remember. Um, yes, I remember hearing about the Friends Church that they were descendants of the Quakers. They felt the Quakers had abandoned some things too much, and they wanted to go back to that. So, yeah, he's a Quaker, not a Quaker. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't think that they. I think they may get it, cranky, as far as they know what it's for. They just don't care. Um, and I think that's the problem that I have with them is they don't care. Um, they don't seem to realize that what can give them power one day. This is true of many like political democratic movements. Like you wrestle and get some sort of power for yourself, and you don't bother to think, okay, if this power fell into somebody hands that I dislike, would I like that? And the answer is no, usually. Okay. Like, would they like to live in an Islamic state run by Islamic principles? And immediately every Christian nationalist would have a fit. Okay. But they don't seem to see the danger there. So Christian nationalists don't realize a lot. Yeah, that's probably true. But yeah, one of the big things I deconverted, I don't have a problem with anybody practicing whatever faith they want to believe. It's when they try to impose it on me as an atheist that I draw the line. It's like, no. Um, yeah, words don't mean words. We run into that a lot around here, don't we, Katie? It's like certain words don't mean anything. So, oh man, yes, yes. Nixon was he a Quaker? I think he was. There were quite a number of U.S. presidents. There's Quakerism was quite popular for a while. Pennsylvania, was kind of the center of politics for a bit. So, because Philadelphia and all. Philadelphia was the seat of capital of America for a long time until they moved it to a swamp, which the irony of that still makes people chuckle. So, yeah, Quakers are, if you find Quakers in Pennsylvania, they are very, very liberal. Um, so, yeah, they don't, nothing resembles what the Quakers used to be. So, yeah, that's a case with a lot of the older religions and older movements that are dominated more by secular ideas. They tend to get liberal and they tend to not be so dogmatic about things. Yeah, you speak the truth here. We all like authoritarianism when we're in power, and when we're not in power, we want everything to be really democratic, and you got to give me my freedom. And that's the problem. I wish there was some politician that would get in office that would respect everybody's liberty about it, but I don't think that ever happens. There's something about government and politics in and of its nature that causes people to go nuts. There's Quakerism and Quakerism. The latter follows the heresy of Duckism, which is little known to due to frequent typos. True story. That's a true story, I'm sure. Let's see. Yes. Oh, yeah. One of my favorite ones to go after is Matthew 6. Because Matthew 6 in and of itself, this is why I changed the way I did. I went from, I did original series called The Tall Tale of Jesus with my Life of Christ series. And I said, no, I got to step back, start it all over and call it Questionable Witnesses, because I want to deal with the teachings of Jesus Christ. And the Sermon on the Mount, without a doubt, has more bullshit in it that Christians don't follow today than any other thing. If Jesus came back and was a real person and this was his actual philosophy and teaching, first of all, he'd be a nutter. But at the same time, he would be very disappointed in the Christianity that exists, and they would probably call him, too woke to be a Messiah or something. But yeah, what you're talking about is the whole prayer thing. Don't pray standing in the synagogue to be seen by others. The idea of going in, having your prayers be private and not public, so everybody thinks you're great and pat you on the back. It's why I was asked twice in certain contexts to pray, and I refused. I'm like, no. I tried to be honest with this one, but the problem with it is like every church service is technically praying in public. So it's like no matter how you try to twist this around, they want to do their practice, so they'll interpret it in such a way that they'll get past it and keep the practice. But like, this is a good example of somebody, reinterpreting a passage of scripture based on current practice. They have a practice that they do as a church or a denomination or a group, and then they have this scripture passage that becomes inconvenient to that practice, and they don't know what to do. So they reinterpret the verse in light of the practice. It's the classic fact of the fact that, because in seminary and Bible college would always talk about make sure you're getting meaning out of the text and not reading your meaning into the text. Yeah, it's the most disobeyed principle of hermeneutics there is, or biblical interpretation. So yeah, you literally, this is what we're doing, so we need to justify it, is constantly really the way Christians interpret and do stuff. I know I did it all the time. Yeah, it's like, well, I like doing this, and I don't want to stop doing it, so I got to reinterpret this passage so I can do it. So, hey, Michael, good to see you. Oh, here to solve a problem. I think they need to watch 6, 7. They think they should be heard for their much speaking. Yes. I mean, and then The real thing about that whole chapter about prayer is the prayer is really weird too, because it's like it's so more about God, but it's like, why does God need my prayers if he's flipping God? Okay, this was one of the things that bothered me about the Lord's Prayer almost from the get-go, even when I was a kid. It was like, why does he need that? So definitely Pauline Christians, or Paul does pray a lot in public. He does it a lot. It applies to pretty much every interpretation of scripture. I have yet to find somebody like look at a passage of scripture and say, "Oh, you know what? We're our bad. We're doing something wrong here. We're going to change our practice." That very rarely happens. It's difficult to find it. Usually, what happens is, like we were talking about the Quakers and Shakers earlier. The Quakers and Shakers have this religious experience, right? And so they run to the Bible to try to justify. The same with Pentecostals. When I was a Pentecostal, our history reads like, oh, we had this thing happen at Azusa Street where people started speaking in tongues. And so therefore we tried to justify it by running to the book of Acts and First Corinthians and all that stuff. And that's how they justified it. But it was always experience first, then justify it with the Bible second. That happens all the time. And Pentecostals are a good example of that. But I think every single Christian denomination has started that way. Like they've had some thought, belief, scripture, practice, or whatever that they wanted to justify because it is a good religious experience. So we're going to do it. Thank you, Ronald. I appreciate that. The more memberships we have, the more emojis we can have. So gifted memberships count. See, those verses would clear the pews, and never mind the verses that are just prior to the Lord's Prayer. So you can say the Lord's Prayer in your closet, never in public. Correct. If you're actually honest about Matthew 6, nobody should ever see your religious practice, including giving to the poor. Like giving to the poor, nobody should trumpet it. You should never say anything about it. You should just do it because God sees you. But human nature is we are a social species, and so we want other people to know that we did good. Okay, so snake handlers, yes, I think that might be a combination act of people believing part of the Bible way too strongly, and then saying, "Yeah, but it says so in the Bible that I should be able to do this." I remember what I used to do with that. Yeah, but that's more like Paul, when he reaches into the fire and gets bit by a snake and says, I don't think you're supposed to intentionally go out there and pick up serpents, but that's kind of the way they did it. Didn't run into that verse. They are kind of an Appalachian anomaly, but they're elsewhere now too. Because the Appalachian folks have transplanted themselves other places. I would not be surprised, like snake handlers aren't in other areas of the world for the same reasons. So, yeah, they were definitely isolated and didn't have help interpreting that verse. Yes, no. I always remind you of the cheesemakers, really? How so? Do I want to know? Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's just but snake handling has always been associated with Pentecostalism, and that's where Earl, I think, is headed next, is the Pentecostals. But I don't know. It's one of those phenomenon of about isolation, being in a place where any weirdness can come up, or somebody's force of personality. I'm sure at the center of all that was some dude or trying to impress everybody and thinking he should be in charge. And so he handles a bunch of snakes and everybody thinks he has the power of God. And it may just be that, he built up an immunity to it. And so, yeah, he's fine. But yeah, I can see where this is true, Cranky, where snake handlers would be easy to entice with tentacles. They would think it's a snake and want to pick it up. And next thing they know, their dinner. Outstanding. So, oh, yeah. I wish the weather would make up its mind. It's either cold or warm. Never in between these days. Let's see, anybody else? But yeah, yeah. I think. See, this is why I want to hit. I'm going to probably start rushing through questionable witnesses because I want to get to the Sermon on the Mount. Because the biggest question I wanted to ask with this series on questionable witnesses is when I got to the teachings of Christ is, are these good teachings? Do they make sense? And I don't know. I think the prayer in the closet didn't make a lot of sense from a religious point of view. So let's see. And Ronald's membership went to Lisa for Truth. So that may mean something now because I'm trying to get back into video content creations, and members will get those a couple of days early. They'll get them when they're released, and the rest of you have to wait. So it's worse here. Like I will go to work and it's like 55 to 60. And when I get out of work, it's like barely above freezing, and it's just killing my bones right now. So yeah, it's an easy way to make an impression on your global audience, the snake handle. Yes, I can see where that's a very cultic like behavior that would impress the hell out of gullible people. Like, oh my gosh. Like you held a snake and you have the power of God because it says you're a true Christian. And it's, if you can do impressive crap like that, parlor tricks like that, circus tricks like that to a gullible audience, you can get power. Okay. For real. So the real problem with that is maintaining it. Well, that's great that you handle this snake. How about this one with a venom you're not immune to? Yeah, 41 is not good either, but that's the way it's been. It's 52 now. I turned off my furnace, so it's so doesn't sound like Celsius or Kelvin either. Is that Kevin or Kelvin? Oh, I don't know. Americans will never change. They're going to be imperial long after. I mean, the fact that the British went to metric astounds me. You're like the founders of a measurement system, and you're banning it. I'm surprised there hasn't been a movement to bring that back. It's the German scale. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's been. I don't see Anne Marie here today. She lives in Michigan like I do, but she was worried about my rain experience the other day, and it's like we got what I would call lake effect rain, and there was a water spout and tornado down south, which is rare, but it does happen on Lake Michigan. So she said it. Michigan weather, especially in West Michigan or the Lower Peninsula, is kind of bipolar. It's all over the place. So when the snake bites, it's never God's fault. It's your fault for being a dirty sinner, except when you are a cult leader who claims that God protects you from snake bites. So they had 5 different imperial variants at one point. Okay. I can buy that. I mean, every time they change kings or queens, we just get a new one. This is a foot now. This is an inch now. I can see that. But yeah, the imperial measurements were always interesting to me. And the fact that Americans hang on to them, despite the fact that we're one of the few nations that kicked them out early, I find that amazing that we wouldn't just run to that. But we have a lot of people in this country who well, that's not why my dad or daddy's dad did it. And so, so there's that. Oh, sure, it's always the girl's fault when she got pregnant. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Oh, at least that's the way religious people like to think of it, Rimmer. It's always the girl's fault. I won't say she's not in part culpable, though. Eat Celsius and Fahrenheit for God and then learned and read. Yeah, it's not a common thing to do in America to convert. Snake Hamlin's fault for leaving out of the refrigerator. Snake. Yeah, there were a lot of trickery going on with that too. I mean, religious con men have been around for a long time, and we built religions off of con men. So, and part of that is if you know something, like I think a lot of these religious leaders back in the day, the witches, the mystics, the witch doctors, it's just that they knew how the world really worked, and they would use that to impress people. Okay. And then until somebody figured out, well, I can do that too. Okay. And as long as you had this secret knowledge that you kept and didn't, let everybody know, you were fine. You could hold on to your power. And so I think, refrigerating a snake so they're cold, they can't react. Yeah, that's one of the tricks. But there's a lot of tricks that, carnies and mentalists and everybody else have taught to these people. Like I used to see mentalist tricks in the Assemblies of God all the time, like cold reading, very popular when it came to prophecy and stuff like that. Like you would have a preacher basically cold read a person with cold reading techniques. You could do that too. Part of my deconversion was realizing how much of this was bullshit fakery. So there's that. Oh, Michael, this is why I keep you around. I really do need people that have outside opinions of how we're doing. We're inching towards the metric system. People, I swear. Yeah, it truly is wild, but it still exists. I mean, when you look at like old circuses and carnies, they knew how to handle animals. And if you knew how to do that in church, you could pull some really weird shit. So there's that. I debate about this. If Jesus was a real person, let's say he's based on a real person, the way he teaches is very cult leaderish. Okay, so I can see where people would say, yeah, he was a real person and he just ran a very successful cult. That's why he's the popular one. That's a valid naturalistic theory that he was just one of the more successful ancient preachers. And so there's that. Let's see, preaching a lunar eclipse and then exploding superstition. Yes, you can do that. If you had like a good, like the witch doctors and, wise women of the past had knowledge of the way the world worked. And if they passed that on correctly, like you could learn some astronomy in the midst of your astrology. Okay. And say, okay, that proves my point. You could start predicting lunar eclipses and things like that just by watching the heavens. So there was that. But it's, I really feel like a lot of these religious leaders of the past were simply people that knew a little science. And, it's like, I think it's Robert Heinlein who said, any significant advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, that would be true of knowledge too. Like if you have advanced knowledge of how the world works compared to most everybody else, you can really impress the hell out of people. And people might think you are a magician or a god or something. I think that could be very well easily explain a lot of the bullshit in history. So posthumously because Jesus was unimpressive. I think it's probably true. Yeah, and this is also true. It's like there's very little distinction, but in the midst of all the stuff that, like, when you consider the idea of the Magi, now I don't know if the Magi were real people. I don't think they were, but the idea that a lot of people have, they were kind of astrologer, astronomer, mystics, people that study the heavens. You could get some true information in the midst of all of that. Okay, and then you have all this understanding of how the stars move and the planets move and all that stuff, and then you add the mystical bullshit in there. But you could also exploit that knowledge for making people think you're really smart. So yes, it is very mechanical. Like it's like very predictable if you understand what's going on. Astronomers are amazing people, because they'll tell you what's going on. And not really. Jesus's miracles have been considered, and I think somebody made the remark, and it was an atheist. I says that he thought that the reason why the Jesus mythology continues is because the miracles are more down to earth, like they're not all that impressive. Okay, and because they're more down to earth, like making food and wine and healing people of disease and things like that are beneficial to people but seem a little bit more mundane than, say, Odin creating the world out of a frost giant's body. That's why the Jesus mythology seems more believable, because the miracles are more down to earth in that sense. So yes, it's a valid point that they are more mundane and less impressive, but that's also, somebody made the point, that's also what makes them a little bit more believable. So even though they're not believable to me and many others, but it's just, that's why it can persist. And I can't remember who postulated that's probably one of the reasons for Christianity's success. So Romans and AI are running all our factories and warehouses in 2035. Established the metrics, and we humans will not have a say. Oh, Ronald. I worry about AI because it didn't turn out the way I'd hoped. What I wanted out of AI and robots was somebody to do all the menial tasks, and then I get paid for them doing all the work. And then I can sit back and write and do content for my YouTube channel and be the creative person. But it turns out that does art and music and all that bullshit. And it just didn't turn out like I'd hoped. And, I don't know, Alex O'Connor is kind of looking at us stink-eyed too. So because it's a practical thing. Like it's not big time, like picking up, like when he says, what would have been impressive, Katie, and super impressive and over the top, is if Jesus says, if you have faith of mustard seed, you can say to that mountain be removed and it'll be cast in the sea. And then he actually does it, like picks up a mountain, throws it in the sea. Okay. That's impressive. But when you just feed people and let people hear you without amplifiers and all that stuff, that's just normal, regular needs being met. And it's a lot less impressive, but it's also a little bit more believable than picking up mountains and throwing them into the seas. So there's that. And it's disappointing in us as well. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I was having an argument about that with some pre-supper who came. Was that Saturday or Thursday? Where he's talking about chat GPT or whatever. I'm like, that AI literally is the the people pleasing golden retriever of AIs. Like it will say what you want it to say. So. I don't know if it'll pull that off. Human beings are too rebellious. Bible talks about Jesus feeding the 5,000. It doesn't talk about why 5,000 people suddenly had the munchies. Yeah, good question. Good point. I think there was a comedian who made a point about the feeding of the 5,000. When he reads the Gospels, he says like all these. It feels like it was a superhero group, and then they all just put all their powers into Jesus because it made it look more impressive. Like we had one superhero that all he did was feed people. He made lunch for everybody, the lunch making hero. And yeah, so what? Let's just fold that into Jesus too. So, Life of Brian's a hilarious movie. It's just great. Now, I didn't like it so much when I was a Christian, but I love it now. So, 5K, and nobody brought a sandwich. Yes. Yeah. Oh, the 4,999 people who didn't like fish. Okay. There we go. Yeah, they didn't like the fish. So they were, I mean, like they're literally next to a lake and nobody brought a fishing pole or anything. So it's just weird. It's a weird story. Well, folks, I got to go. It's 25 after, and I've got to get ready for work. So this is my Friday night. So, but I will be back Saturday. And Saturday, we're going to do Fangsology, where we're going to talk about everything we know about fangs so far. And I think if I get one more super chat, I got one more hat to reveal. So that'll be one more super chat. I'll count the, oh, Earl's giving me a wait. So she must be working on some more stuff. And I've got to go someplace to go get said stuff. uh, yeah, Earl's a woman. Oh, all right. Wait. Oh, making me wait. Oh my goodness. But yeah, we are. We're waiting again, Wolf. Michael, I tell you. Yeah, Katie's a woman too. Anne Marie, when she's here, she's a woman. I have actually quite a few women non-believers. I find that given the percentages, it's amazing to me how many I do have. Um, Usually, these things tend to be. Well, that's the thing I'm talking about. Yeah, it's the more realistic a lie is, what you can. Yeah, Leela is too. So yeah, there's a few ladies around here. There's a bunch of them. So I think they like I like being here, and I'm appreciative of them and their input too. All right. I'm waiting. I'm being patient. I I'm not going to get into the idea of whether they're ladies or not. My definition of what a lady is has changed over the years, Cranky. So, oh, it's okay, Earl. We'll wait. We've usually never been disappointed. Almost always, I've been very happy that I waited. So, Uh-oh. Why did I know? Oh, we'll have to debate these on Saturday. We'll have to. All right, let me find it. There it is. Hopefully it'll be visible. There we go. Commandments of Fangs. All right, thou shalt not worship any gods before Fangs or after Fangs, or Fangs himself, unlike other gods. He is not a narcissist. Okay. Thou shalt not eat corrupted vegetables unless anointed and purified with ranch dressing. I don't know if it's ranch. I may debate that. We have to come up with the true dressing that is a holy sacrament. I don't know. We'll have to figure that one out. Thou shalt not cover thy neighbor's rabbit or garden. Oh, thou shalt subscribe to Ed, our benevolent dictator, keep your fangs lore and wear of silly hats. Thou shalt attend all live streams and keep these days holy. Thou shalt freely and repeatedly take the Lord's Fang's name in vain. Thou shalt ridicule and challenge all religions by giving believers the good news of Fangs. Thou shalt not nibble on your neighbor, only your neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not deprive any onion babies of their binkies or Fangs of his carrots. Thou shalt choose to ignore any of these commandments if thou feel so inclined. Go forth and engage in fuckery. Just don't be a waffle. Fangs is an agent of chaos. He approves. All right. I love it. Oh, my goodness. Oh. Yep. Okay. I've got to throw this into the lore now. We'll have to figure this out on Saturday, but I'm gonna try to put something together where I have collected all the things that I remember of Fang's lore, and try to remember all the sources. So yes, so there is. We will debate the commandments of Fangs. So you're definitely getting some love for this one. So yeah, but that's going to be it for me today, though. I really do genuinely have to leave, and mostly I'm hungry, but I will. I need to get something to eat before I go to work. So thank you all. Yes, definitely love it. You guys are awesome. We will be going over all of this on Saturday. We'll be pulling out all the Fangs lore that we have or know of or think we have, and we'll put them there. So hit the like button, yes, please, appreciate it. Fang Commandments, okay. So there's that. Yes, but blessed be Fangs. Hit the like button and subscribe to our benevolent dictator in the name of all that is fuzzy, unholy, and slightly ridiculous. Nom 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 nom. All right. Bye, everybody. I appreciate everybody. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure you're taking all your time, money, and opportunities and spending them on yourself, the people you love and care for, to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. Don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith. One, Fangs won't like it. And two, it's a waste of your time and energy. I speak from experience. And as always, everybody, thanks for stopping by. And I will catch you next time on Saturday.